Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all, whatever the time is as you hear the sound of my voice. My name is Timothy Dickey. I am your ASIS Midwest Regional Chapter Chair, and I also serve the Central Ohio local chapter of ASIST, and it was thanks to the generosity of an award from the Central chapter of ASIST that I was able to attend the recent annual meeting of the Association for Information Science and Technology meeting in Salt Lake City, Utah. As part of the terms of the award, I was told to report back to the chapter with some of the highlights of the experience, and I am more than happy to do that. The chapter meeting, the ASIST annual meeting was both in person and virtual this year, but it was really good, honestly, to be back seeing colleagues in person and sharing information and thoughts and professional ideas with them in the same room. Over the course of my time in Salt Lake City, I received an award from ASIST. I am in the 2021 inaugural class of distinguished members of the association. I led a panel presentation with the ASIST Standards Committee, updates of information standards and standardization efforts, and participated in 2 committee meetings, as well as attending a number of content sessions. The content of the ASIS conference tends to be deep and thoughtful and theoretical, and I have some practical highlights to report from some of the things that I heard. The opening plenary speaker was Luciano Floridi from the University of Oxford. He's an Oxford philosopher, and the talk was about defining some ethics of information sharing based on his concept of semantic capital. And he talks about how semantic capital is present in all information that we all use to make sense of human experiences. His concept of semantic capital allows us to think about how the power of information and the value of information, at least of some information, can in fact increase over time, and how with this increase in value, or even in the basic value that is present in semantic capital, we can argue for the value of what we provide, which is information. He closed by talking a little bit more broadly in society, saying that where our information ends and where our access to information ends, our world ends. So semantic capital is an issue of social justice as well. There was another panel that spoke to how consciously thinking about serving communities is a concept that we can use beyond serving users or beyond serving customers, and how the concept of serving communities empowers greater inclusivity towards, for instance, BIPOC or LGBTQIA or other underserved groups, and how by serving communities we can give these underserved groups greater emphasis in our services. So another practical application of a theoretical concept. There's a group of presentations this year looking at different aspects of how people use health information these days. Some of that had to do with the need for evaluating the trustworthiness of a site for health information and its positive impact on people's health, rather than just thinking about scanning websites or feeds. You wouldn't think in 2021 we would need to prove. We need to think about the trustworthiness of health information, but there is research out there trying to do so. There's another presentation about how many groups, non-native English speakers, older adults, and those from lower incomes, need to bring others in to help them search for health information and evaluate health information and use information. So a social justice aspect to how we provide access to health information when there's needing some translation. And there was also a good presentation about how some people faced with serious diagnoses such as cancer actually avoid deeper research and deeper information because the health information can actually be threatening to them. So another thing to think about when we are providing health information to individuals and to communities. AI, there was a very interesting experiment run on a couple of AI systems which operate on massive inputs of text. One is owned by Microsoft and one is owned by Google, two entities that have a lot of text and are investing a lot in AI. Both of their AI projects are trying to create the next generation of search such that we can just talk back and forth with a utility instead of having to enter search terms. And the researchers found that the AI technology is actually very, very good already at making connections between concepts and words and creating something like natural language searching. But the experiment showed that these AI systems are actually horrible at making sense of concepts. It was a very, very funny experiment in some of the results that they shared at how the conversations went. And the ASIS Standards Committee, I mentioned that I moderated a panel for the Standards Committee. One of the things we did on the panel was just let everyone know what the ASIS Standards Committee does for the association, which is to report to the association on efforts by standardizing bodies. This includes things like Z3950 and all of the standards that our systems run on, but also standards like PDF, standards having to do with coding, standards having to do with cataloging and description, a lot of things like that. The Standards Committee also votes on behalf of the association on the adoption of standards and the revision of standards in the international community. We have one vote just alongside a number of governments and alongside Google and alongside Microsoft. And the Standards Committee also participates in the writing and revising of standards in the international community. Also in the program, Marcia Zheng, our own Marcia Zheng from Kent State University, gave two parts of a paper. One had to do with the importance of standards in medical terminology, specifically how standards in medical terminology and the description of medical conditions helped us deal with info overload during the COVID-19 pandemic. She also spoke about how standards and the application of standards can make medical research data more what is known as FAIR, F-A-I-R. Medical research data can be more findable by other researchers, can be more accessible by other researchers and by the public, can be interoperable among researchers, and can be reusable, such that FAIR research data is more effective in helping the medical community deal with crises such as COVID-19. And Marjorie Lava, out in industry, spoke about developing standards for information in standards themselves, such that people who are in different disciplines can think about how standards help them to know what information is out there, to control the information and the spread of information. While I was in Salt Lake, I also did some corporate espionage at the Salt Lake City Library and some others. This is I brought back some marketing materials and some art some zines actually, that their teams produce in a weekly program, and some things like that to share with public librarians here back in Columbus. But I also want to just share some images of the libraries around there to give a sense for what someone else does with their space. As you can see, the Salt Lake City Central Library has a very expansive but still welcoming exterior. Frank Lloyd Wright likes to have buildings that reflect the the environment around them, and it seems that the architect here has thought about how the um, the range of mountains surrounding Salt Lake City might be reflected in the building itself and in the views. You cannot beat the view. This is a regular adult reading area near the magazines inside the library, but all of the glass makes it very, very open to the stunning surroundings of Salt Lake City there. The interior as well has some interesting special features. On the right there is the main concourse, which as you can see is tall and completely bound by glass, such that every level you can see out into the surrounding Wasatch Mountains on the left. Those are all just little reading areas, a few feet wide, with a seat and a table and glass out onto the mountains. On the right, those are the levels of the stacks and resources of the main part of the library, all of which are glass bound on the other side. And down the concourse, interestingly enough, they have space for a lot of retail, such that it is a welcoming community kind of space. There's a flower shop. There is an independent coffee shop. There are a couple of art galleries independently selling art off of the concourse, and there's even a branch of the local public radio station, which broadcasts, the NPR broadcasts out of the concourse in partnership with the public library. They also happen to have an automatic book sorting machine, which was very popular with folks to watch the books going down the conveyor belt into the little bins for delivery to different parts of the library. The teens, as I mentioned, have a particular space which is called a teen zine. They also do a lot of work with zines. The plexi there is all showing artwork that the teens themselves do in their weekly zine creation time. The children's area, I was a little surprised at first, was in the basement, and I thought that that was a little bit of a strange idea, but number one, it is a secure location because there's only one way into the children's area, which is easily monitored, and it does not suffer at all from being in the basement because it is flooded with natural light above the little canvas sails. Those canvas sails look up into one of the glass-bound areas, 3 stories tall, such that all of that natural sunlight comes down into a very safe children's area. And they have a couple of dedicated play spaces off of the children's area. This one is called the Attic, which has some climbing areas and little reading nooks, and it's also lit from above with a skylight. I also took a moment to go around Salt Lake City and look at a couple other unique libraries in the area. The Salt Lake City Family History Libraries is associated with the Mormon Church, and with the support of the Mormon Church and their interest in genealogy, the Salt Lake City Family History Library is one of the largest genealogy libraries in the world. Family Search is their database product, and it is run out of the publicly available Family History Library in downtown Salt Lake City, just a few blocks from the main library and a few blocks from the Mormon Tabernacle. which is another unique institution for Salt Lake City, of course. And through someone who I went to grad school with, I was able to get a backstage tour of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir Music Library, which is the image that you see in the lower left. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, or now known as the Tabernacle Choir, has some 400 members and such. They have a very extensive choral music library and organ music library for the 6 organs that are on site in the various buildings in Temple Square of the Latter-day Saints Church. So thank you for your attention. I hope you found some interesting things to see and maybe have had your interest piqued in attending an ASIST annual meeting yourself. The next one, next fall, is going to be just over in Pittsburgh, and it's another good city for libraries and information institutions, and I expect the Midwest chapter to have a very strong presence there. Central Ohio local chapter may even think about having a carpool. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions that you have, and I look forward to seeing you in the next ASIST meeting.